Hey, I want to welcome our viewers to our podcast, Kennesaw Happenings Podcast. And we have an educator, former educator, and we have another topic that's dear to my heart. And we're going to get into really finding out a little bit about Paul and what he's doing now and how he's impacting the community. So I'm going to let Paul introduce himself, what he's doing, and who he serves out there, and then we'll get you to know Paul. Okay, Paul.
Well, thank you, Pete. I appreciate that. Appreciate the opportunity to sit here and get on the podcast with you. My name is Paul Montaperto. As Pete shared, I have many years in education, K-12 education, a little over 20 years, serving the Atlanta community in both public and private schools as a teacher, a coach, a principal, and a head of school for a small school with kids with dyslexia. And I've spent the last 12 months or so in the consulting field in education, working with families and helping them navigate the school landscape in the Atlanta area. And the service that we've been able to provide is identifying what their academic profiles are for the kids and the family's values, and then making some recommendations of public or private schools in the area that we believe might be a best fit to service the child and the family. And it's been a really cool experience transitioning from working in a school building to now helping families discover a great school that fits their needs. And there are over 100 private schools in the Atlanta area. There's some great public schools and charter schools, and so we have the privilege of helping families with that. And then second to that, there have been cases where families have had to move into the Atlanta area or move across Atlanta. And I'm a licensed real estate broker. My wife is a licensed real estate agent. And so we have been able to help them find a home or sell a home. And so we've kind of come up with this concept of where we want to be able to serve families in the Atlanta area or transitioning to the Atlanta area with helping them find best fit schools and homes. So we are your experts with schools and homes, and sort of like a relocation service, if you will. And so it has been a blessing to be able to serve the Atlanta community in that manner. And so, again, just happy to be here and chat with you, Pete, and looking forward to a good conversation.
Yeah, I got a bunch of questions for you because you hit on some topics I like. Or I am aware of. I don't know if I probably like it, but let's just go back to just a little bit. So being that you were a principal of Mount Perrin Middle School, was it?
Yes, the middle school principal at Mount Perrin Christian School, about a mile down the road here.
And I know just generally, I'm just speaking for maybe our viewers, probably one of the more important things is what schools are out there. So what kind of led you to transition into more of that role versus, being involved in the education of kids?
Yes. So, life has lots of twists and turns. And I found myself hitting the pause button. I had transitioned from Mount Perrin Christian School to another school for a few months, and it turned out to just not be a good fit for a variety of reasons. And so the Lord kind of just asked me to pause. And in that, I had an opportunity to connect with a friend who works in the consulting field with college admissions. And she had a little bit of a connection in the K-12 community and asked me to help her out a little bit in the interim that summer. And so I was able to meet families and really just listen. And what I heard was they were either frustrated or just didn't know what to do because their child was not successful where he or she was, but they didn't know what the options were moving out there, other than maybe what a neighbor might be telling them, or that's the teacher at the school, or a special ed coordinator or something like that. And so in the last 20 years of being in the Atlanta area, I've been able to develop relationships and get connected with a lot of private schools and public school districts in the area. And so I was able to offer some knowledge and insight and perspective to these families and help guide them and assist them to consider some schools that maybe they had not heard of. After that, some of them were like, great, thank you so much. This has been very helpful. While others said, okay, here's a school. Now what do I do? And so with my experience of interviewing hundreds of families that were applying for Mount Paran Christian School when I was a principal there, or at the Sage School, I was able to identify the proper questions for them to ask, how to complete the parent questionnaires, walk them through the admissions process, which can be quite complex for some of the private schools in the area, and give them as much help or as little as they want or need. And so very fluid. And after doing that for about 8 or 9 months, I finally said, you know what, I think there's something here where I can take this experience and knowledge that I've gathered over 20 years of working in schools and be able to provide a service to families who are in this position where they just are not sure what their options are. And I'll be honest with you, Pete, that in the last 5 to 10 years, K-12 education has changed enormously. It's not just the school that you're zoned to where your neighborhood is. I mean, that's one good option for a lot of people, but there are so many wonderful private schools in the Atlanta area. There are great charter schools, and more are coming online all the time. There are hybrid schools where they're part-time to help serve kids who may be highly involved in a sport or an acting career or things of that nature. And then what we learned from the COVID pandemic in 2020 is there's a lot of online virtual options now across the state, and a lot of homeschool groups. And so a lot of families just don't know what is out there. And so we have made it our job to figure out what is out there and then share that with families who are trying to find the best fit for their child and for them as well.
Right. What do you see? I mean, I think of some common things, but what's like the top 2 questions you get repeatedly from parents that are trying to find the right schools for their kids? What do they say?
Yeah, I think the first one is, well, how do I know it's going to be the best fit? Right? Especially for parents who are considering moving from what's been provided as a free education through the public school system to now maybe paying for an education. That's a large commitment financially for families. And so there's sometimes some trepidation there as far as, can we make this investment without really knowing? And so the easy answer for me, and what I really encourage parents to do, is you really can tell a school's culture by being in the school. So you got to go visit. You can go on their website, you can read all the great things that they're saying about what they do, and graduation rates and test scores and athletic teams and performances, or whatever is important to you. But until you walk in those doors, in the first couple of minutes, you typically can get a feeling for the warmth or the lack of warmth in a school, and the way people will greet you or engage with you. When you see kids kind of moving about the building, or you have a chance to peek into classrooms and hear what teachers are doing, that can tell a lot. And I've had families either slam dunk, okay, this is it, or turn around and say, absolutely not, for whatever reason. And so I think it's that first question is, how do I know it's going to be good?
Right.
And then secondly, I really think that for a lot of families, they know that their child is not successful or not happy, or they're not happy where they are. But at the same time, it's the only thing that they know. And so there's just a little bit of fear. And if you're going to that neighborhood school with all your friends and all your neighbors, and now you know that school is just not providing what your child needs, that's a big change. Because it's not just moving to a school. It could involve selling your house and moving to a whole new community. But at the same time, I think most parents will say that their number one commitment is to their child, right? That's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to nurture and grow our children to become successful adults. And so being in the right school has a lot to do with that.
Right. That's what would you say? I know in our initial conversation, the word dyslexia came up, and
Right.
you were actually in a school that I guess it's Sage that
Correct.
that had. So what are the challenges with dyslexic students? I'm curious just to hear from you. I have personal experience with it, but I want to hear what an educator and what a person with that's close to it, what you think.
Yeah, I tell you what, dyslexia has gotten a lot of attention in the last 4 or 5 years, good attention by organizations that are basically committing themselves to educating the general public, as well as lots of schools and teachers on what dyslexia is and what is the best way to provide a learning program for those who have it, not just for children, but for adults as well.
Right.
And so what I have learned is, number one, statistically, it's about 1 in 5 people.
Really? Okay.
About 20% of the population have dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
And for many, many years, going back decades, folks didn't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
In the state of Georgia, it wasn't until 2019, I believe, that the Georgia State Department of Education would not even recognize dyslexia as one of the eligibility classifications to receive special education support in the public school system. And so now they do, because there's so much more research that has demonstrated that it's real. It's more than just switching letters. I think, when I was growing up, that's what I understood dyslexia to be, is if you confuse your letters or your numbers or you write them backwards. It's so much more than that. And the other thing I have learned is there's a lot of folks that have come out who are extremely successful with careers in the corporate world, acting, financial world, that have come out and said that they are dyslexic, and that that has actually allowed them to think differently about how to pursue a goal that they have, and has yielded great success. There's so many stories that Made by Dyslexia is an organization that really does a great job of spotlighting, those great stories. And so from personal experience of working in a school where kids would come to us, transitioning from a school where they were unsuccessful. These are kids that are, 6, 7, 8 years old. They've been trying to learn how to read at home or at school, and for whatever reason, they haven't been able to. Well, we know the reason. It's just because they have dyslexia. And so they come in and they're beaten down, they're defeated, they feel like they're dumb, and they don't know how to read, and maybe they've been told that just do it faster, just do it better, and so after several weeks or a few months of seeing a different way to learn how to read through different methodologies, such as the Orton-Gillingham methodology, which is very, very popular in the world of dyslexic schools, and being around alike learners who have similar experiences, it was heartwarming to see how they would just come out of their shell and find that success and that confidence, to where now they weren't making up excuses and trying to hide when it was time to learn how to read. They were raising their hands, wanting to be the first ones to read aloud in class.
Right.
And so, it takes a little while for them to relearn a different strategy and approach.
Right.
And but once they develop those strategies, that's the toolkit that they now have for the rest of their lives in order to access content and meaning through reading and comprehension of words. And they go on to experience great success.
That's it is encouraging to hear when you said the toolbox. I came across a grant at the Shanks School back about 8-10 years ago. And so when I went to the class, the lady that was heading it up said, you had to be tested, and I'd already been tested. So she said, well, you have it, but you'll be amazed at the degree of people in this class of the different challenges with dyslexia. And she was right. So, I saw some things that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, because I have a very, I don't know if it's sounds, it's letters, but I maybe you can confirm this. Whenever I see something, my brain goes to solving a problem. So I've always, is that a common trait? Because people have been telling me this the last 6 months, that dyslexic people are wired like to solve problems because they're always trying to tackle them. Are you seeing something similar, or is that just a few people that are sharing that with me?
Yeah, no, I would say that I've seen that as a trait in many of the students I've had a chance to work with over the years. And I think in the research too, you'll find that there are patterns there. As far as I think the words you used were wired differently. That is correct. This is all physiological in the brain, and a dyslexic's brain is wired a little bit differently. And so the way they perceive or the way they receive information is very different than someone like myself who's not dyslexic. And so it's a matter of learning how to receive that and then process it, and then being able to put it out there and move forward. And so as far as the problem solving piece, that makes sense to me. And that's where the brain would go naturally. And so I think when you see a lot of the folks that have come out and have been spotlighted by Made by Dyslexia over the last several years, and they probably would identify with a very similar trait.
Yeah, it's actually the person introduced me to Google text to voice or text to, and so I had never heard about that. She said, "Hey, let me share with you." So I was speaking into Google Docs 10 years ago, 8 years ago, whatever. Now I do it in my phone. So I do everything on the phone because I can speak it, and of course it transcribes it. What do you see? Let's get back to your role in transitioning people into the schools that are best suited for it. Special needs. Talk to our viewers about what are the challenges that parents have with special needs kids, and what are you seeing as far as your solutions that you have out there to better fit them with things that it can help them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Pete. The first thing that pops in my mind is just what do I do now? You know, children who are evaluated at a young age, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they're evaluated because they're struggling in school, and the teacher's made a recommendation, and so the psychologist will do a full psychoeducational evaluation, and that yields dyslexia or ADHD or a processing disorder, or a variety of learning diagnoses that are classified as just being an obstacle for a child to access the learning, similar to someone sitting next to them who does not have that diagnosis.
Right.
And so it's all typically been, well, what do I do now? How do parents are not just naturally educated in that. And so the first step is to become educated, is to find out, you mentioned dyslexia, it's to find out a lot more information about what dyslexia is, and what are the practical things that you can do as a mother or a father to support your child at home, and collaborating with the teacher or the school on how you can support their instructional models that they're providing there. And so that's the first thing, is educate. Secondly, is it's oftentimes extremely emotional because naturally we just say, well, what's wrong with my kid? And it's not that there's anything wrong with them, they're just wired differently. God made us all different. We're all unique in his eyes on this planet, and those unique traits can be great blessings and provide us the opportunity to be successful in many, many, many different ways. But nonetheless, it can be scary and it can be emotional. And so it's part of what we do when we meet folks who are looking for something different than the school where they are, because that school can no longer support the child because of a new diagnosis, is we try to provide that emotional support to say, you are not alone in this. There are lots and lots and lots of children and people in this world who have something similar. If you think about ADHD in the last 10 years, that has been we have lots and lots of kids being diagnosed with that. I mean, I think I had it when I was a kid. I just was never diagnosed. And so what we have learned as educators is there's a lot of different ways to make sure we can provide an environment for those kids such that we allow them opportunity to attend to what's on task in a manner that suits them best. And in some capacity, that's really difficult to do if you're in a classroom of 40 kids, which unfortunately some of the bigger schools have classes that are really, really large. And so one of the benefits of a parent seeking out a school that might specialize in small group instruction is just that you're minimizing the distractions for a child who has ADHD. And there's, lots of examples in a lot of different capacities within that. And so as we listen to, a parent's thoughts and ideas and some of the challenges that they're experiencing, then we make recommendations with some different schools that we really feel like could be well suited to support those kids based on what those needs are.
Yeah, that's my youngest was diagnosed with it in high school. And so when she went to college, we were able to get her extended times for testing, note takers, and all the tools, like you said earlier. If you have the tools, it's easier to build anything. So in education, I'm sure having those tools and knowing that you could have an extra 20 minutes on a test and somebody would take notes and you could absorb it differently than just trying to write it out. So I want to do this because we want to have you back on our show to dive deeper into a topic like dyslexia. But I want you to give our viewers, one, how do they get a hold of you? And the last thing is, if you can recommend somebody that runs in your circles that you think would be a good guest for our show, we'd love to, obviously have that person on there because we want to dive deeper, too, into special needs and another one into dyslexia. So just how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So thank you, Pete. I appreciate it. And it's the time's gone by fast, hasn't it? So I look forward to another opportunity to come on and chat with you. But yeah, so our business is Family, the number 2 Family, Inc. Inc. Okay. And you can reach us at www.f2finc.com. That's our website. And my email address and phone number and everything are on there. There's a contact form if you want any information to reach out to us. We'd be happy to provide that. But as far as I think somebody specifically in the local community, in Cobb County, you and I were just talking about it. There's a school right here that is K through 8, works with kids specifically who have dyslexia. And a lot of times there's a secondary piece, dyslexia, but they also have ADHD or they have a slight, processing disorder or things of that nature. And it's the Grace Point School.
Okay.
It's a faith-based school just around the corner off of Piedmont Road. And I think they're actually moving to Cobb Parkway if they haven't already to a new location because they're growing. And so, reaching out to them certainly could be a benefit because that's what they do. And their goal is to have kids come to them, be able to provide that toolkit that we've talked about on the show here, and then transition them out to a school of their choice moving forward. Great anchor in our community, and they're just continuing to grow and do things well.
That's awesome because there's a resident here, Jane. Oops, I don't know if I'm supposed to mention it, but we started talking, and she was a late diagnosis of dyslexic, and her son is currently at Grace Point. I don't know his position and all, but yeah, we'd love to have somebody from Grace Point share a little bit about what they're doing in the community and that kind of thing.
That would be a great idea.
Awesome. And so we always give our guests the last word. So if you could share with our viewers just an insight you think that would be beneficial for people to know about, and whether it's in your educational role as a principal or what you're doing now, that they can understand and hear.
Yeah, I think the big thing, Pete, for me, as I've been transitioning into this new idea and this new role, it's really about educating the general public on what school options exist in the Metro Atlanta area.
Okay.
Beyond, like I said earlier, you live in a house that is zoned for a school, and that's great. And that school might be exactly what you want and what your child needs, but sometimes it's not. And the educational landscape has grown so diverse since over the course of the last 10 years, and especially since the COVID pandemic. And so I have been my quest is to learn about all the different options in the Metro Atlanta area, connect with the admissions departments, the head of schools and the private schools, to understand the school districts and what their continued visions and missions are moving forward. And then when I meet a family, being able to make a very knowledgeable recommendation based on what they need on the student's academic profile, but also what they desire as far as a family's values. And so I think, again, for families out there, don't just rest on the idea that you have to go to your neighborhood school.
Right.
That's fine if that works for you, but there are a lot more options out there, and we can help you with those options.
I love the word options. It always empowers us when we have options. And we want to just tell our viewers that the comment section below this podcast, certainly post some questions for Paul and be able to give him, whatever's on your mind. And that'll allow you to get good information from the right source and leverage, the knowledge you need to make those good decisions for your child. So thank you, Paul. We want to appreciate you coming back. And you have to agree on the podcast, you're going to come back, because we didn't even get into really your personal, I always love to hear, when you're not working, what do you like to do? So we're going to put that one on hold. Sounds good. You just think of that one next time. And we're going to get into you and your family and just things that are going on in your life.
Good.
All right. Thank you, Paul. We appreciate you very much being on the Can This All Happening podcast.
Thank you, Pete.